It has been far, far too long since a new year began, and I looked ahead at the slate of upcoming releases with anything but apathy. But here comes 2024, and here comes I, crawling out of my grave of sorrow and despair. I, at long last, spy a beacon, shining forth from the sky, land-bound, blasting the earth and tearing the land asunder. And in that angelic crater, there was a list, yes, a list, my friends, and on that list were these 20 games that I could be excited about over the coming months. So join me for a moment as I fawn over these blissful memories yet to come. Starting with Like a Dragon, Infinite Wealth. This year is already starting with a humongous bang that goes by the way of Like a Dragon, Infinite Wealth. These past few years, I've made my way through all 8 parts of Kiryu's story, and now that I'm all caught up, for the first time ever, I'll be playing a Yakuza game at launch to see how my boy's story finally concludes. But of course, it's not just Kiryu's story this time, as the franchise's fresh new protagonist, Ichiban, is also here, bringing with him the return of Yakuza 7's turn-based battle system. So it seems like we're going to be going back and forth between 2 protagonists, as well as at least 2 main areas, the most exciting of which is Hawaii, the first time the series has taken place somewhere outside of Japan. And judging by what little I played of the demo, the Hawaiian town looks like it's going to be absolutely massive. Judging by the rest of the series, I can only imagine the sheer amount of side content, sub-stories, minigames, and who knows what else this giant new location will have in store. And as if this wasn't already shaping up to be the biggest and most ambitious game since Yakuza 5, Infinite Wealth will also have an entire game within a game called Dondoko Island, which is basically a Yakuza meets life sim. It's got farming, fishing, crafting, decorating, socializing, and all that other stuff I usually have very little interest in, but will probably sink way too many hours into just because it's part of Yakuza. Since it's looking like Infinite Wealth will be equal parts a finale and a new beginning for the series, it feels good to see that the developers are seemingly going all out for this one. As for how I'm going to find the time to play a game with this much content, I have no idea. Especially considering another super long JRPG is releasing just 1 week later, that being Persona 3 Reload. So, back when I first played the original Persona 3, I was pretty disappointed. Coming fresh off of Persona 4, which resonated with me in so many ways and was so unlike anything I've ever played at the time, Persona 3 obviously felt like a big step backwards. It took me a couple attempts before I finally got into the groove of things, but once I did, I had a pretty good time and was satisfied all around. Still, with the amazing time I had with Persona 4 very fresh in my memory, Persona 3 just didn't get a fair chance to shine for me. But now that many years have passed since I played those games, and my memories are getting increasingly muddled as time goes by, Persona 3 Reload couldn't have come at a better time. This is a full-blown remake of the original game with fancy schmancy HD graphics, fully proportioned cel-shaded characters, and all sorts of gameplay improvements that should bring this game up to modern standards. With this remake, Persona 3 will finally get a chance to stand on its own merits in my mind, and, in theory, become a better game than it ever had been, and I cannot wait to finally experience this story all over again after all these years. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. This game is gonna be good, I just know it! Cloud and his posse are finally getting out of dusty old Midgar and stepping out into the greater world, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing all that stuff in the original PS1 game now fully realized and expanded upon. There are so many moments I'm looking forward to seeing. I want to see how they explain Yuffie joining the party. I want to see Vincent in this game's amazing action-based battle system. I want to see how Sid is portrayed in this game, and I want to find out how the super bosses are incorporated into the story. And I want to go to the Golden Saucer and play all the mini-games and experience all that fun side content. And perhaps most of all, I want to see how the events at the Temple of the Ancients play out in this pseudo-remake's new screwed-up timeline. Whatever happens, like I said, this game is gonna be good. Shante Advance Risky Revolution. Never did I expect that the cancelled Shante sequel for Game Boy Advance would one day return. long after the series finally made its comeback on DSi, long after it blew up in popularity on the 3DS, long after it entered the HD era and became a sizable franchise spanning 5 games and multiple crossover appearances, even being featured in Super Smash Bros. Itself, never did I expect that they would go back and finish a game they canceled decades ago and release it to the public. That is insane. Shante Advance is real, and it is happening. Now the real question is, how good will the game be? After all, this was the original second game before it was cancelled and Risky's Revenge stole that honor. But as far as I'm concerned, the series didn't get really good until the third game, which is now technically the fourth game. Either way, I'm not expecting this old GBA game to blow me away or anything, but being a Shante game, I'm practically guaranteed to have me a grand old time. Stellar Blade. Man, this game has been a long time coming. Ever since it was announced in 2019 under the codename Project Eve, I've had my eye on it. And as much as I'd like to be, I'm not usually a fan of so-called character action games such as Devil May Cry and the like. And this game to me looks a lot like that style of game, but gosh dang, this game looks super cool and stylish and has a great art design, and it just looks so rad in motion, and by golly, if these trailers don't make me want to play it the moment it comes out. I mean, I wish I had more to say about it, but I can really only just talk about how cool it looks. I just have a real good feeling about this'n. Fantasy Life I, the girl who steals time. Did you know that Fantasy Life was one of the best games released on the 3DS? If you actually played it, then you probably agree. If you haven't, then you probably don't think you're missing out on much. You probably saw it and compared it to something like Animal Crossing or Story of Seasons, when really it's practically nothing like either of those series outside of some very superficial aspects. The problem is that there's really nothing else out there like Fantasy Life, and it's difficult to explain what the game is like. You just kind of gotta play it to truly understand it. But the simplest explanation is that you're constantly swapping between jobs that have you exploring a big world, fighting enemies, mining ore, chopping trees, etc., and then bringing all your loot and spoils back to the hub town to forge, build, tailor, and cook it all so that you can then repeat the process all over again in what may be the most fun, rewarding, and addictive gameplay loops I have ever seen in a game. Fantasy Life I is shaping up to be much more the same thing, which is more than I could have ever hoped for. After Fantasy Life 2 was developed for mobile devices in Japan only, I never thought the series would ever make a real comeback, though I've gotta say my very high optimism does come with a side of caution, as the trailers have really been doubling down on showing off a lot of what I can only describe as contents and themes blatantly ripped off from Animal Crossing New Horizons, and I'm hoping that this is just a case of misguided marketing rather than being indicative of the game's main focus. Metaphor ReFantasio. My excitement for this game primarily comes from the pedigree of its development team. This is a really unique looking take on the fantasy RPG genre, being made by the people responsible for Shin Megami Tensei and Persona, and seeing how those games are very contemporary in their settings, I've always been very curious to see what their version of a medieval-style fantasy world would look like. Then the game was finally revealed after years of teasing, and yeah, it looks even more outlandish than I expected. I haven't been going out of my way to watch all the trailers since I want to go into this game fresh, so I know nothing about the story, and I'm still not quite sure what the gameplay is like, but nonetheless, I have pretty high expectations considering who's making the game. Also, I just really miss the DS and 3DS days when Atlus made games like this all the time, just on a smaller scale. Games like Metaphor feel like I'm getting something I've been missing for a long while, so here's hoping it lives up to the hype. Contra! Operation Galuga! Oh yeah, Contra is back. It is being made by none other than WayForward, who made the mostly excellent Contra 4 back on the DS. I've been reading up on some developer interviews, and it really looks like they're putting their all into making this Contra as it can be. Now, I know I'm gonna sound like a filthy casual when I say this, but though I can up, down, left, or FBA start my way through the original NES game anytime, easy peasy, Contra 4, as fun as it is way too difficult to beat, to the point of being unfair. The developers have since acknowledged that and are promising to make Operation Galuga more accessible to, you know, the average human. Now, I'm not saying I want this to be baby's first Contra, and I'd hate it for it to be too stress-free, but it's very reassuring to know that these developers are learning from their past experience with the series, and looking to perfect the formula and make it even better than before. Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater. Well, would you look at that. It's one of my favorite games of all time, getting a remake with fancy schmancy graphics. Not gonna lie, it's kinda sad knowing Kojima isn't involved, because I don't think he'd just make a remake that is literally just a graphical upgrade, sprinkled with quality of life improvements, and from what I can tell, that's just what this game is. And if I'm not mistaken, they're not even re-recording the voices or anything. It's looking like a very quick and dirty remake, whereas Kojima likely would have put a lot more passion and his signature weirdness into this. But regardless, it's still MGS3, and I still adore this game, and if the only major difference is that the graphics are really nice and modern now, then just give it to me already and I will gladly gobble it up. Silent Hill 2. Fun fact, I have never played a Silent Hill game. Correction, I have played the original Silent Hill 2 for a negligible period of time, and I hardly remember a thing about it aside from that one big fella doing his thing. But even long after the original game's release, Silent Hill 2 is still considered a quintessential survival horror game, and an absolute must-play that has stood the test of time. And I guess it's a good thing that I've waited so long to give this game a real chance, because now, when I do play it, I'll be playing this all-new remake that should, in theory, make for the definitive way to experience Silent Hill 2. In theory. Only time will tell if this remake ends up being great or a huge disappointment. Let's all hope for the former, because after all of Capcom's incredible Resident Evil remakes, I've got a fever, and the only cure is more horror. Suikoden 1 and 2 HD Remaster. And for the last Konami game on this list, we've got this double pack of pixel remakes for the first two Suikoden games. I'm cautiously hyped for this one, because I've been hearing you people blab for decades about how amazing Suikoden 2 is, but after finally playing the original Suikoden a few years ago, I ain't gonna lie, it didn't leave much of an impression. So maybe Suikoden 2 still has a chance of wowing me, or maybe this series simply isn't made for my very specific tastes. Either way, I'm a fan of how sleek and clean this version of the game looks, so the monkey part of my brain that goes ook pretty graphics has me more than ever looking forward to finally playing that second Suikoden game and seeing what all the hype is about. Paper Mario: The Thousand-Year Door. Well, by golly, gee-oh-whiz, would you look at that. It's another remake. But no, it's not just any remake. It's a remake of what just may be my favorite video game of all time. It's also a return to form for a series that used to be something that the word amazing can't even do justice for. A series that abruptly changed into something so far removed from what it once was and continued to drift further in that opposite direction game after game despite the loud and unyielding cries of the original game's fans. No, it's not a brand new traditional Paper Mario game. Yes, it's just a remake, yet a beautiful one with incredible graphics and with so many new flourishes visible in that first trailer alone, with remixed music that makes the wings of the soul go aflutter. It may not be a new game, but it's the first sign that they actually listen to the fans, that they know that we want more games in this style that was so unceremoniously halted just 2 games in. They know that we love the Thousand-Year Door, and they're giving us the Thousand-Year Door. And perhaps one day, we will get that new game we've been dreaming of for all these years. This isn't just a remake. This is a ray of light, a singular beacon of hope, a solitary crumb of true splendor, a minuscule shred of magnificence, here to shine a golden droplet of holiness onto this wretched, dismal, foul existence. This is video games. Visions of Mana. This game was only just announced during the Game Awards, and gosh dang if I wasn't instantly captivated the moment the reveal trailer began to play. Here we have a brand spanking new Mana game that isn't just a remake or a remaster, but an actual big old, big boy, big budget, big new game, and it looks delicious. Obviously, we don't have much to go on aside from the fact that it looks visually amazing, but man, does it look promising. It's got all these classic Mana enemies looking even better than ever before. We've got these big open zones to explore that are evocative of something like Pokemon Legends Arceus. We have some really cool looking underwater exploration, and the character designs are whimsical and undeniably Mana. Like a lot of games on this list, Vision of Mana could easily end up being a subpar disappointment, but like with those other games, you just gotta be optimistic and hope that the end product ultimately becomes something that can live up to the high expectations they instantly build up with this amazing reveal. Dragon Quest III HD 2D Remake. This is the only game on this list that isn't officially confirmed for 2024, but come on already. It's a remake of an NES game and it was literally announced years ago. I don't understand what could possibly be taking so long, but with series creator Yuji Horii only just recently talking about staying up playtesting the game, I think it's pretty safe to assume that this is a year we're finally gonna get our long overdue remake of one of the most influential video games ever created, Dragon Quest III. If you haven't played DQ3, you are in for something truly special. It may be a remake of an NES RPG, but even back then, this game was very ahead of its time. This game has you create a party of custom characters, and you're set out on your way across a big ol' open-ended world full of dungeons and towns of diverse cultures, a world brimming with exploration and stories to discover around every corner. This game is one of the fan favorites of the Dragon Quest series, and for good reason. It is a quintessential JRPG, and when this remake is finally released, you owe it to yourself to experience it. And me personally, Dragon Quest is one of my favorite video game series, and I will eat up anything they serve. And it just so happens that this time, they're serving up the filet mignon of classic role-playing games. It is not to be missed. So, those are the main ones I'm looking forward to, but let's quickly round this list out to an even 20 games. Here's a few more I'm interested in. Granblue Fantasy Relink. Another game that at the very least looks visually delectable. I don't know a single thing about the Granblue Fantasy universe, but fans of the property seem to swear by it. I'm sure they're a trustworthy group, so I'll be keeping a close eye on this and hoping for a hit. Sandland. Here we've got a whole new game based on Akira Toriyama's early 2000s graphic novel. While it does look like a lot of money is being pumped into this game, the early gameplay videos don't look as exciting as you'd expect from this game's premise, so this is another game to be cautiously hyped about. Euphoria, The Saga 2. Is it a sequel? Is it a remake? Is it something in between? Either way, Sunsoft, in a grand effort to make a comeback, seems to think that their obscure late-generation NES game is worthy of a revival 30-plus years later, and by golly, I think they're right. Another Code, Recollection. This 2-in-1 package includes a full remake of the DS game Trace Memory, as well as the Wii sequel that made it as far as Europe, but never graced the North American continent, much to past me's immense disappointment. In the many long years since we've last seen this series, the point-and-click adventure genre has been constantly and rapidly evolving, so the question is, do these old games still hold up? I guess we'll find out soon. Princess Peach Showtime! Aside from the novelty of a brand new Peach game, what we've seen so far has looked pretty bland and slow for my taste. That said, Nintendo isn't usually one for making bad games now, are they? So, I think we just need one more trailer before anyone can know for sure if this game is truly hype-worthy or not. Beyond Good and Evil 20th Anniversary Edition. This hasn't even been officially announced yet, but its existence was leaked by the ESRB quite a while ago at this point, along with a few tidbits of info such as the promise of improved graphics. The original game was really good, and seeing how the sequel probably won't release until like 2080, this is likely the next best thing, assuming they don't screw it up. And there we go, 20 games. Lots of remakes. Like this vid, don't bother subscribing, I never upload anything. Thank you for watching, God I'm hungry.